Good evening. I'm calling to order the special meeting of the Board of Education. Today is Monday, October 28th, and we are meeting at the Fordyce Building. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. DeAngelis.
Here.
Mrs. Lysy.
Here.
Mr. Smith. Here. Mrs. Sudar.
Here.
Mrs. Van Hope.
Here.
All members are present.
We do have just one change to the agenda, and that is we're deleting number 6, and we'll have that at a later date.
Yes.
This time is very public participation. Anyone who wants to make a comment relative to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then to a presentation. Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is the first of our building presentations, and the objective is to give the board and the community a snapshot of progress at the high school. As you know, a week ago we had our State of the Panther where I and my team gave the update for the district. This is specific to the high school, and so we're happy tonight to have some members of the high school staff that will be presenting that. And to begin the presentation, I'm going to turn the introductions over to John Schweitzer, who's the Director of Secondary Academic Affairs, who will get our presentation started this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Bell, Mr. Vasic, it gives me great pleasure this evening to introduce Dr. Charlie Smilak, the principal of the Euclid High School, to present to the board and to the public at this special meeting the school improvement plan and how Euclid High School is doing. I will allow Dr. Smilak to introduce his team and turn the microphone over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Schweitzer, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Bell, Mr. Vasic. We appreciate this opportunity to present our school improvement plan for Euclid High School. We have outlined the school improvement plan around Mr. Bell's 3 district goals in terms of increasing student achievement, fiscal responsibility, and also increasing the credibility level of our school district within the city. So that's what you will see as we progress through. I'd also like to introduce Mrs. Hopkins, who is our 11th grade principal, Mrs. Brown, who's our guidance department chair, along with being the director of career technical and post-secondary enrollment educational options. They will have different slides as we progress through our presentation. We'd like to start with a quick summary of what we have based all of our improvement efforts on at Euclid High School. We've tried to be research-based in our approach to school improvement. This is a slide that we've used a number of times actually with the Board of Education, but it's so important to really our core of what we've tried to accomplish that I wanted to present it again. These are the factors in determining student learning. And you see that opportunity to learn, meaning what's happening exactly in the classroom. If those lessons, if those opportunities are research-based, it leads to the highest percentile gain in student achievement. And so everything that we've done has been geared around this slide, trying to bring research into our classrooms and our initiatives to improve student achievement. We took a different type of approach to building our vision and mission statement this year. We really wanted to simplify it and to have some sort of a memorable graphic that would help to summarize our efforts. And we started with thinking about the why. We don't talk enough about the why in education. We get caught up in acronyms and school improvement plans and initiatives. But the reason we do what we do is to make a difference in students' lives, to change lives. And we are confident that our teachers are the best educational opportunity that our students will have to improve their lives and to really lead to a better outcome as they progress toward graduation. So we wanted to try to focus on the why. We continue to call attention to this in staff meetings. We call attention to it on a monthly basis so that people remember the reason we're really here is that we believe we can make a difference in kids' lives. The how piece, or really what you would call sort of the mission statement, would be the instructional framework and the 5-step process. And I provided copies of those for you. We're not going to reference that in depth because those are initiatives that have been in place in the district. Certainly you're familiar with the 5-step process and how it guides our collaborative efforts, as well as our instructional framework and how that guides our lessons within the classroom. And the final step the final piece, the vision statement, is every lesson, every kid, every day. We believe we put into place the right initiatives. They've been research-based. They've been collaborative in their development, and now we need to make sure that we use every lesson. Every lesson should follow that research-based framework that you see. We should be reaching every student, every kid, every day. And if we do these things, if we're really attending to every lesson on every kid on an everyday basis, then we will make a difference and we will change lives. And the results, the numbers that you see, the numbers that we talk a lot about will take care of themselves, because this graphic will have guided our efforts. As we talked about, we geared we structured our presentation around Mr. Bell's different goals. And the first was to improve student achievement when he came into the district. Our 2013 performance index was 84.7. This gave us, on the Ohio Department of Education report cards recently released, a C. The performance index, again, is just kind of a compilation of all of our test scores. And you see that we got that C average. The highest possible performance index is 120. And ours was 84.7. If you divide those, simple calculation gives you 70.6. So that was Euclid High School's performance index. We always feel that it's important to call attention to this slide, because when we talk about an achievement gap or performance gap at Euclid High School, that is most pronounced in the performance of our regular education students versus our special education students and how they pass their test. We're at about 21% special education students, and so certainly it's a subgroup that's very important to us, and yet you see that we struggle. There's a very large gap between our special education and our regular education students, and you see these different numbers here. If you just rated Euclid High School on the percent of regular education students passing our tests, certainly we would be a much more highly rated school. It's not an excuse, it's something that we continue to work at, and we will talk about strategies for improving that gap later on in the presentation. You also get graded on how many indicators you met. We are rated on 10 indicators at Euclid High School. That is the Ohio graduation test in both the 10th and 11th grade. The bar in the 10th grade is a 75% passage rate, which you see we met in reading and in writing. The bar in the 11th grade is an 85% passage rate, and you see where we met that in reading, social studies, and writing. We like to look at trends, and I'd like to call your attention to a few specific trends. It's always my goal as a principal. You want discipline incidents to decrease, and you want student achievement to increase. And so we want all of these lines to be moving into a positive direction. You see, for the most part, we see relatively flat lines, but I do want to call your attention to both our science department and also our social studies department. The science is the orange, and the social studies is the green. They have gained and they have sustained that growth. And they have sustained that growth because they have applied the instructional framework, they have applied the five-step process with fidelity, with integrity. So we really hold them up as models, because that is the type of sustained growth that we want to see from all of our departments. We also are rated by the Department of Education on our graduation rate, which would be an additional student achievement indicator. You see that our 4-year rate was 69%. This earned us an F, which we're not satisfied with, and our 5-year rate was 70%. Also earned us an F from the Ohio Department of Education on our report cards. But what we're very proud of is the growth that we've made in both the 4-year and the 5-year rates. We attribute this to work that our senior principals have done in terms of making sure that students are attending to what they need to attend to and passing the Ohio graduation test and earning credits. We also attribute it to individual meetings that we have with students. Our counselors call all of their seniors, meet with them on an individual basis so that they will understand what's required of them to graduate, whether it is a makeup class or an extra additional tutoring that they need to pass an Ohio graduation test. But we're very excited about these trends, and we believe through the initiatives that we put into place that these will continue. An additional promising trend, as Mr. Bell mentioned at his State of the Panther address, are our improved ACT scores. We've attempted to build what we call a culture of achievement. And in terms of a culture of achievement, we've tried to have students understand that everything they do at Euclid High School will lead to an opportunity when they leave. And we want that opportunity to be as great as possible. The ACT is an important indicator when colleges look at students and who they want to admit and where they want to place them. Certainly the ACT is one of a primary factor. And you see that our 2013 average scores increased by that percent, or by that number, I should say, from 2012. And so we're proud of that. Also, where the asterisks are, those were the highest scores in the last 5 years. So we believe that this is a result of our increased rigor in the classroom. We've attended much to this instructional framework, references Bloom's taxonomy, which is a way of measuring rigor in the classroom. And the ACT is very rigorous. It's a very high-stakes test. It's a very complex, the steps that students have to take to actually answer questions correctly. And we're happy to see this and believe it reflects what's happening in our classrooms. At this time, I would like to introduce Mrs. Hopkins, who's going to continue our presentation.
Good evening, Madam President and members of the board, Mr. Bell and Mr. Bassett, and to the public. I would like to just share with you some of the strategies that we've sort of put into place to help increase the rigor, help increase our achievement. And so the first thing I'd like to just talk a little bit about is the new Ohio teacher evaluation system. One of the more daunting tasks that administrators across the state have been given is to evaluate every teacher in their building every year. We, here in Euclid, we're doing about a third. And so we went from an average of about 8 teachers to now we are averaging at about 21 teachers, at least at the high school, that we're required to evaluate. And part of that evaluation is that we have to touch those teachers at least 10 times during this process. And that changed. In the past, we only truly touched them 1, 2, 4, maybe 5 times. And so we doubled the amount of contact, and we pretty much tripled the amount of teachers that were actually responsible for evaluating. It is our goal at Euclid High School to do this with fidelity. We want to make sure that we are doing this monitoring and creating a culture of achievement where we're working very hard to meet each and every one of those teachers, to follow along with this process, and to ensure that our teachers know that our expectations are high and we want them to continue to improve in this process. The next strategy I'd like to share with you is Master Connect was implemented district-wide really for this school year. Master Connect is a data collection program that allows us to collect data quickly. Teachers can actually just put the papers in front of their computers and collect the data. They could do it just on the laptops or on the iPads, and that data automatically goes into the program and lets teachers know if students are at a mastery, near mastery, or remedial level in whatever standards they are testing. As a result of that program, that allows us to implement the 5-step process, which you are aware of, with much more quickly and really with much more meaningful data. And so teachers are able to get with their TBTs, take that data, and actually say, well, we've got 15 kids who mastered it, but we've got 5 kids who didn't and 5 kids who are near mastery. What are we going to do? And they sit around and they really work diligently to try to come up with strategies to address those students. And so that Mastery Connect has been a great addition to our ability to actually reach every kid. When we talk about the achievement gap and we talk about where our special education students are relative to our regular education students, one of the initiatives that we put into place a few years ago was the co-teaching model. And so what you have here is some data actually are the percentages of SLD and ED students who are in the co-taught environment. You'll notice that we've got pretty decent numbers in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade because we implemented this 3 years ago. Each year we added a grade. 12th grade was not a part of that implementation process. And so that's why those numbers look the way that they do. And so we are continually giving our special education and regular education teachers who are in these co-taught environments, we're giving them professional development supporting them, trying to help them make that environment really work for our regular ed and our special education students, because the entire purpose of that is to give them access to the regular curriculum. The more access they have to that curriculum, the better they will do when they have to take the high stakes test. And then finally, we have a really tight professional development plan, is I guess how I would look at it. We specifically looked at what we really wanted to accomplish, and we put together a plan. So the first thing was we wanted to make sure everyone was trained on Master Connect, and we've done some specific trainings. We brought Master Connect people in and had certain people come over here and get some specific hands-on training. But we've also done trainings at our school, and we have our techs who are going into TBTs and working with teachers on a daily basis. And so that's one of the things that we're doing. We also are differentiated instruction. On our November professional days, we're going to be doing a presentation on differentiation, which is one of the cornerstones of really trying to help reach students who are not achieving and reaching all students. And so helping our teachers better understand what differentiation is and what it looks like is one of the focuses of our professional development plan. Technology use in the classrooms. We have our Chromebooks. They are in, and they are in classrooms, and anytime I'm in there doing a walkthrough, I see students working on their Chromebooks. And so giving teachers more professional development on how to use those books in a manner that really supports education, but not just, that's not just there so that the kids can have something fun to do. And then finally, continuing to support our co-teachers with PD days and PD sessions on Thursdays. And so at this time, I am going to turn it over to Mrs. Karen Brown.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, families, community members. I'm here to talk today a bit about one of the new tools that we are introducing to students and families here at the high school this year that we're hoping will really continue to drive home the point of this culture of achievement that Dr. Smilak keeps referencing, and that we're really trying to get to become a part of the language at the high school, and that's Naviance. Naviance is a college and career readiness platform, a piece of software that students and families can use to really help in their college and career planning. It's something that we've started with seniors this year, and we're going to hope to roll down to juniors, sophomores, and eventually to freshmen to help students do more longitudinal planning and not wait until senior year to really start to think about the kinds of decisions that they are going to have to make. Naviance is really a great tool because it allows for better communication between the students and the counselors in a way that is on their level, the way that students like to communicate these days, which is digitally. They don't talk to one another. They really don't want to talk to us either. Although we have those face-to-face conversations, it's easier to reach them via email. They can respond to us. And so this is really a tool that's useful, but is also something that they can have in their pockets. There's an app that they can access on their phones. They can be assigned tasks by the counselor. They can access any searches that they've done in terms of their college searches. There are career readiness tools. So it's really a very robust tool that we're just starting to scratch the surface of in the use with seniors, but something that we think will continue to be useful as we roll it down to the younger grades as well. Our introduction with seniors started in the senior classrooms earlier in September, and since then we've been having those individual meetings that Dr. Smilak referenced to try to make sure that students are comfortable and how to use it, and that they are able to access all of the tools that they need. What our real hope is that students will be able to connect the decisions that they are making right now in the high school to the choices that they will have when they graduate, and trying to make that as real for them as possible. And so we think as we continue to raise the bar, that they will continue to grow with us. And Naviance, we think, is one of the tools that will help us do that. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Smilak.
In continuing the presentation of how we plan to improve student achievement, we will continue to improve the use of the intervention enrichment period to increase student achievement. You'll recall that this was a 2012-13 initiative to begin the use of this 8th period, where we converted 7 53-minute periods with no intervention enrichment dedicated time to 7 50-minute periods with a 30-minute intervention enrichment time. We showed the board some data last year. We will continue to evaluate the impact of the intervention enrichment period through student survey data, the number of students failing. Again, when we talk about every student every day, obviously we want to decrease the percentage of students who aren't meeting standards. And we'll also continue to survey our teachers. Our survey data last year showed that both students and teachers believe that this was an important intervention. In our conversations with families, it's great to be able to offer that as a resource, where you didn't used to be able to say, well, we have this dedicated intervention enrichment period. We're very proud that we now have that as our 8th period. We also, as we've analyzed the use of intervention enrichment, we realize that some teachers, all teachers are using it, certainly it's a contractual requirement, but some teachers use it better than others. We see some teachers that structure actual mini lessons for students. Other teachers are there and they give students their makeup work, or they let them retake a test that maybe they didn't do so well on. Those aren't bad uses, but the best uses are continuing that instruction, continuing that research-based lesson that they may have left off earlier in the day. And so we will continue to use our exemplar teachers to present these different strategies once per quarter at faculty meetings. We're very proud this year to introduce this new strategy in terms of building a culture of achievement, the term or the notion of dual enrollment. And dual enrollment courses empower students to earn college and high school credits simultaneously on our campus. Certainly you're familiar with post-secondary enrollment options where students leave our campus, go to Tri-C or Cleveland States or Lakeland. We're very proud that now, for the first time, students can get that same advantage of free college education on our campus with our teachers during our schedule. So students who maybe had some type of extracurricular that they didn't want to jeopardize, they couldn't maybe find transportation to a college, we offer those on our campus now. In 2013-14, we're offering courses in biology, humanities, and political science. In 2014-15, we will add English. We actually had a teacher who was going back to get his master's in English. You have to be approved to be an adjunct member of a faculty to teach these dual enrollment courses. And so we didn't have anybody in English. English is an important kind of a gateway class because many upper level classes, for instance, African American history, last year we wanted to offer that, but students hadn't had English as a gateway because we didn't have the English instructor. And so we'll be able to add that, courses in fine arts as well, and mathematics. We also, like anything, we went through a first year, and we know that we made some mistakes in terms of not publicizing enough to our 10th grade students these different opportunities, and so we will step that recruiting effort up this year. We also want to point out that the Ohio Department of Education will include this data on the 2014 report card in the Prepared for Success segment. So we're very excited that we've taken this significant step to offer these courses. We're one of only 10 high schools in Cuyahoga County that offers dual enrollment. Last week we had a private school shadow day, and we're trying to increase the recruiting efforts that we make to private school students. This was certainly one of the strategies that we touted. It's a great opportunity for our students. Mr. Bell's second goal was to enhance district credibility, and we know that one of the strategies to enhance the credibility of the school district is to make sure that the flagship of the school district, Euclid High School itself, is a welcoming environment to walk through during a school day, after school, etc. Mr. Bell had the vision to take us all to Arizona, or not all, but many representatives from all different schools to Arizona to learn more about the Renaissance program that he had implemented successfully in Westerville. We have taken some of these strategies, certainly we want to take all of them, but you have to start small. We've taken some of these strategies and began to use them to improve the building climate at Euclid High School to reinforce desired behaviors. What you see on the right-hand side is what we're calling our freshman wall of fame. Our freshmen actually have a little bit of ownership over the building. They've committed to graduate in a ceremony, and then they stamp their hand into a wall as a member of the class of 2017. So if you haven't seen that, that's on our third floor across quarter. There's about 425 handprints. It's a very, very nice addition to our building climate. It was a very significant ceremony for our freshmen to attend to. And again, gives them kind of an ownership of a wing of the building. We have Students of the Week. Mr. Gersker, our 9th grade principal, began this a year ago. It was very successful. We've implemented it now in all 4 grades. We're recognizing students as Students of the Week. with T-shirts and breakfast and medallions and letters home. So we believe that, again, we want to continue to reinforce our desired behaviors. We have a Renaissance team that is helping us to plan a Renaissance week. The Renaissance team actually was a takeoff on Mrs. Hopkins' ambassadors, and then we added some more students because we wanted more viewpoints to help us determine how students best wanted to celebrate. And so we've gotten their voices, and they're helping us to shape what Renaissance Week is going to look like. Each quarter, we will recognize students with perfect attendance, students who had no referrals, students who had a 3.0 grade point average, and those who improved their grade point average by 0.5. Certainly if a student went from a 1.2 in the fourth quarter of last year to a 1.7, they've made some improvement. And we want to recognize that as well. And these students have helped us to shape these celebrations. They also had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Bell and help him to form some plans for improving the high school and some opportunities at the high school. You see that we have made progress. I know it's a short amount of time. We measured this after 8 full weeks of school. But you see that we have a number of areas in which we have decreased the incidence from 12-13 to 13-14, and that's over the same time. So we compared after 8 weeks last school year and after 8 weeks this year. Significant decrease in physical aggression and fighting. We're very happy about that. Again, in terms of increasing district credibility, or enhancing district credibility, Euclid High School needs to be a great place to walk through. We've made a lot of progress during our time together, but we continue to make progress as well. Disruption referrals are down, class cuts are down, just disrespect to fines a little bit up. Mrs. Brown, I'm going to introduce one more time. She's going to talk about some of our strategies of increasing fiscal responsibility by targeting more of our resources toward services that will directly impact student achievement. Mrs. Brown?
We've recognized that by very definition, a culture isn't something that can be achieved in isolation. And so we've really made an effort to try to call upon all of our resources this year. Obviously, what's going on in the classroom with the teachers, that's at the forefront of all of our strategies. But we also need to make sure that we're calling upon all of the resources that we have available to students. And to that end, we've really tried to increase opportunities for student growth. Dr. Smilak has really given opportunities for College Now Greater Cleveland to have an increased presence with our seniors and with our juniors in the building. College Now is a service that helps students who are looking to go to college who may not have financial resources, and they're able to help with fee waivers for college applications, for ACT and SAT testing, but they offer a number of other services as well. And so we've really tried to expand Mrs. McCourt's exposure in the building. She's been able to help fund some significant field trips. We started in the spring last year, and we've been able to arrange field trips this year already, not just for seniors, but for juniors as well, to try to increase their exposure to college campuses, try to provide some motivation. And so our students are going to take trips to John Carroll, to Kent State, to Lakeland, to Auburn Career Center as well. So really trying to span a whole range of universities and post-secondary opportunities, because a four-year college isn't what every student is looking for, but students need to know what their options are and where we can really go to try to make sure that they are successful in the future. We've also increased opportunities for ACT preparation that started in the guidance department last year with offering some after-school tutoring and workshops for students. Mrs. McCourt, through College Now Greater Cleveland, offered a boot camp for students this summer who were interested in attending, and so students were able to do that over the summer, and then also on the weekend there's a boot camp. So we've really tried to just expand the presence of those services in the high school. We've also tried to make sure that, again, extending beyond just the senior year and reaching down to earlier grades, that we're starting those conversations earlier, that we are really having a building dialogue that surpasses just talking about the OGT and getting to graduation, but really in that culture of achievement, talking about being prepared for college and making sure that our students understand where that bar is set and what they have to do to reach the bar, but also to make sure that our teachers know where that bar is set and what students need to know in order to reach it. And so to that end, we're going to be giving the Explore test and the Plan test next week, which offer a great deal of data that teachers can use in order to inform their instruction at the high school to make sure that students are prepared to take these high-stakes tests, which obviously are precursors to the ACT. And so that's something that is new this year. We started with the Plan test last year, but we're expanding that and also using the Explore with the 9th grade this year. So in order to prepare for that, teachers have been able to prep the students with sample questions posted in Mastery Connect. The counselors will be going into classrooms this week to further prepare students for the testing next week. And then once the results come back, the counselors go back in after to explain to the students what their reports mean, what that will mean for them in terms of their choices later on, and then the teachers will receive that data that they can use to help inform instruction. And finally, Dr. Smiley.
Thank you. Obviously, the entire presentation in terms of strategies has been about adult behaviors and adult indicators. And that's important because we know that the adults that we have are our best resources to influencing student achievement. But here you see, kind of in summary, our student goals. And so it's important that we also remember that we're doing all these things as adults so that it makes a difference for our students. Every day, every lesson, every kid. We want to increase all OGT passage rates by 5%. We want to increase ACT subject average scores by 0.5. Again, that's what we've talked about, a culture of achievement, going beyond the minimum at Euclid High School. It's not just about the Ohio graduation test. It's not just about 20 credits. It's about more than that. It's about opportunity when you leave. To continue to decrease incidents of physical aggression, disruption, and truancy, by 15% was our bar. We want to increase enrollment in dual enrollment classes by 25% for next school year. We want to increase our graduation rate by 5% each. So these are the impacts that we hope to see on students. Before I want to turn it to questions, I want to thank Mrs. Hopkins and Mrs. Brown. Mrs. Hopkins and I have been together for 5 years. We started together when Euclid High School reunified, and Mrs. Hopkins and I have worked really hand in hand on so many of the things you see here. Mrs. Brown has pushed me continually to think about things like ACT and college entrance exams. And, for a while we weren't there yet. But I'm very grateful for Mrs. Brown's influence in the Naviance movement and the ACT and the Plan and the Explore. This time I would like to entertain any questions from the board.
Anyone have questions or comments? Mr. Smith.
Just a clarifying comment for me, Dr. Smilek. On page 2, I think slide 5, your improved student achievement, disabled versus non-disabled. I'm assuming that this data is for the class of 2013, but then on page 3, when you've got the graduation rate, which would be slide, I think, 8, you've got 2010, 2011, 2012. So now I don't know what...
This data right here is from the Ohio graduation test last year. So these are last year's 10th graders.
Okay.
The following data that you're asking about would be the most recent measurements of the graduation rate for those cohorts of students. So they didn't actually, the Ohio Department of Education didn't publish the 2013 graduation rate because it actually takes more time to calculate. So these were the most recent graduation rate calculations.
Okay. And I just, for members of the board, Mr. Smith, this is the culmination of the new state report card. So what you see there is just those are the projections from that. So they just took the OGT data and rolled that into the new state report card projections. So that's kind of the connection.
Got it.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
Just a couple of comments. On page 6, the first slide, improved student achievement strategies. When you were talking about dual enrollment courses, I'm just thrilled, Dr. Smilek, that we were able to do this year. And I'm glad to see that we're going to do a recruiting effort for the 10th graders. Are we talking 10th graders this year?
Yes.
So, because it's only for 11th and 12th graders for dual enrollment. Is there any chance that there would be 10th graders that would be prepared, those students who were at the middle school earning high school credit and coming to the high school, would any of those 10th graders be possibly considered from some of these dual enrollment courses for next year?
That is actually where we see some opportunity for growth would be specifically in math.
Yes.
Because of the level of rigor that they've been taking in their coursework.
Great, I didn't even have to get there, you read my mind, so thank you, thank you, Dr. Smilek. The other thing that you mentioned during that particular slide was that we had private and parochial school shadow day, and I had heard some really great reports.
Great.
So my children talked to a lot of the students that came to Euclid, and one male student in particular said that it was a much better shadow day than St. Ignatius.
That's great.
So congratulations for that. I don't know what all occurred, but there's a good chance they'll end up picking Euclid over St. Ignatius, which is great.
Well, we entertained some very talented students Friday, but the best part of Friday was a student panel that we had. And we did not script this. I mean, we picked students with diverse experiences and diverse backgrounds and could not have written their responses to questions any better. For the students to sit and talk about Mastery Connect in their classroom, and to talk about dual enrollment, and to talk about how much the teachers care, and to talk about the Explore and the plan, I'm not sure it gets much more rewarding than that.
So and this was the first year that the high school had implemented this, and this was done because, and I don't mean to take the words out of your mouth, Dr. Smilek, but Dr. Smilek has met with some of the PTA representatives and parents over in all of the parochial schools within the city, and they decided that they would like to open up a shadow day in the Euclid High School that would not conflict with a day of school at the parochial schools. And was it Friday the
25th?
The 25th.
That's fine.
Yeah, last Friday was an off day for most of the parochial school kids, and so that was a perfect day to open up the high school for a shadow day. So that was great coordination on your part, and I understand it was a huge success, and I'm very anxious to see how this might work out in the upcoming years. So
sure, we want to continue to grow. We had some good cooperation from some Catholic schools as well, so we're grateful for that.
Thank you for your effort in outreach in reaching out to our parochial school partners and making that happen for us. So that was great. And then just one last comment, that commitment to graduation ceremony and the Wall of Fame for the freshmen, that's all my daughter Jessica could talk about the first day of school. So that was great. That really made an impact, and I think the kids really enjoyed that. So that was really nice to see you implemented this year, and I think that really is going to set the tone and culture with that first class coming in, those ninth graders, that'll carry them all the way through as seniors. So good job.
Thank you.
Any questions? I got a couple here. How many students did we have with the shadow?
We had 8.
8. That's a start. I mean, we go from there. My other question was regarding the Prepare for Success segment. Are we including the post-secondary kids too, or just the kids in dual enrollment? Okay.
It'll include post-secondary. It'll actually include AP as well.
Mm-hmm. And then, how many students this year are doing post-secondary?
64.
In all various degrees, part-time, full-time, Lakeland, Cleveland State, Tri-C, Notre Dame. Notre Dame this year. Okay. Is that up from last year, or is that?
It's pretty flat from last year. It may be off just by a few, but it was in the 60s last year.
I think it's a nice program. I think it's a nice option for students. Okay, thank you.
How many dual enrollment students do we have?
35. Which is actually a little bit less than 10% of all of Cuyahoga County. Cuyahoga County has about 430, and we have 35 of those. So that's to me, that's a pretty impressive chunk.
Any other questions or comments? Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming. I know it's hard to do at the beginning of the year because you don't have a lot of data to share with us. So we see your plans in that. On the evidence of your enrichment intervention period, it seems like most of your evidence is coming from student survey and staff survey. Is there any way to track anything on as far as grades of
Well, I think that was the third indicator, was number of Fs. And then last year what we also tracked was percentage of students on the honor roll. The difficult nature is if you're going to pinpoint Ohio graduation tests or ACT scores, you're sort of targeting specific grades. And so we wanted to use measures that applied to all grades. And so those would be, the specific grades in the classrooms.
Okay, so, you didn't give us any data here. Did you have data that showed that you did make inroads in all?
At the end of last year?
Yeah.
It was actually sort of polarized. We had more students achieve honor roll status, and we had more students fail classes, which was a frustration to us.
Okay, yeah, that does seem odd, but
maybe
it means it's the students who really want to succeed took advantage of that extra time.
And Madam President, members of the board, what would be helpful, I think, to Dr. Smiley and to me, because I can help him, is if you have specific data that you want to see let me know. And we can let you know if there's challenges with that, but we can then start to put that together, because one of the things that we talked about was what kind of data could we have that would be specific enough to actually measure. You can look at the students that fail, but again, does that necessarily give you the total picture? So we just want to make sure we have the information that you want to be able to give you a better picture of what the enrichment period is looking like. So as we go through our work sessions, you can just kind of give me an idea of what you think that might look like, and we can start to put that kind of data together. We're working through it with what we have, but again, it's something new. It's a new initiative, and just trying to be able to measure and have the significant evidence to be able to measure whether it's effective or not has been a challenge. So we just want to be able to work together to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think making honor roll and the students failing helps, but it would also help to know if students went from a D to a C and a C to a B. Did the teachers see improvement in their classroom, in their work? So it would be, because not everybody's going to make honor roll, but if they can get out of the D category, at least into C's, then they stand a better chance of success down the road. And so I think that kind of movement would be what we'd need. I would like to see.
I remember last year when we looked at it, the teachers definitely attributed that it was a valuable resource. The students did too, although I understand those are subjective views. And so what I hear you asking is, for some specific movement in GPAs potentially.
Yeah, something along that line, so that we know that it's not just this, oh yeah, we all feel better about it. Is it actually making a difference?
I understand.
Okay. And then on the Naviance, I know you said you started with the seniors. How long will it take to get through the high school? Is that something is it going to take 4 years to get that through the high school, or is it something that you're trying to do quicker than that?
Karen, would you do me a favor and come to the podium, please?
It's our hope this year to roll it out to juniors during second semester as well. So it's our hope, at least through the end of this year, to work with seniors and juniors, and then next year to start with sophomores and possibly freshmen. I don't envision it taking 4 years for it to get to all students, probably 2. We're hoping to get the upperclassmen done this year.
It seems like with all the touching of the students to do all this, you're going to start wondering what you did before all of this work became available. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking the same thing with principals and assistant principals, with all the work they have to do for teacher evaluations. And you're going to say, I'm just wondering, is there something that slips by then, or is it just you have to plan your time a lot better and work harder?
Well, I can say that I know this year I feel like I'm working a lot harder. So I don't know. Hopefully, I think definitely planning is a big piece of it. And I think we all recognize the beginning of anything is going to be a lot of work. And so it's our hope that eventually, once we get it up and running, that this will help us to be able to all work more efficiently, and that it's not so overwhelming like it feels right now.
Can I just add just a couple things, Madam President and members of the board. This is something that we have talked about, and something I had when we were in Westerville. We use this to be able to, as Mrs. Brown pointed out, to be able to connect the parents to the career and college readiness piece. And like anything, you have to build the road before you can actually start to implement the change. And so for our counselors and staff, this particular program is going to allow them to be able to document and be able to have a real clear paper trail for students, lack of a better way of saying it, that they can be able to go back and plan and be able to really take ownership of their own education. What has happened in the past, and I know when I was a high school principal and had to go through all this, the counselors had to do a lot of the work to get students to understand how to take ownership. This allows them to be able to do it. I think Mrs. Brown pointed out the fact that we are dealing now with digital natives. They deal with the phone and they deal with all of the electronics and the technology. This particular program gives them an opportunity to be able to use what comes natural to them and then embrace that into their work, like with the Chromebooks and all of the other things that we have. So as she mentioned, as with anything, it's a little different because now you have to give up something, and students then have to then take the ownership of it, and that's a different kind of teaching model, but can be very effective in the fact that they then take real ownership of their own education. I tell my son all the time, I said, you can go to your counselor in college and find out where your grades are, well, you can know it for yourself, because you need to know exactly what's going on for yourself, and this is an opportunity for them to be able to keep track of what it is that they want to do for themselves and that ownership. And that's it's going to be a different model for them. And so the point behind all that is that the rollout has to be intentional enough that we don't miss anything, because you don't have the second chance to get the impression that we want to make on the first rollout. So the counselor team is being very strategic and very intentional about how they roll it out, making sure they're clear, making sure that teachers understand what their role is in this process, so then as it goes from grade level to grade level, that we can be consistent in our messaging and we can continue to get the kind of growth we want. If we don't do it that way, then what we'll have is a mixed, inconsistent message, and we're not going to be able to get the residual effect that we want. So that's the idea behind the strategicness of going slow and being able to do it the way that we want to do it. So I applaud their efforts, and I know it's been a little bit different, especially when we have this trifecta out there and all the other things that are going on, but this is a way for us to be able to then codify for students their learning and be able to get them to move forward and take that ownership, which is extremely important, which is what Dr. Smilek has pointed out as far as when you look at every child in that building having their own kind of individual educational plan. This is an opportunity to help them do that.
I think it's great, because I know in talking to kids, a lot of times you say, well, what are you going to do after high school? And they say, well, go to college. Mm-hmm. And then you say, like, where? And they have no clue. Right. They don't know what it takes to get there and so forth. And so it sounds like this is going to really kind of define it for them as far as, where you can go. And hopefully it will help our kids expand their horizons past the traditional, well, I'll go to Lakeland for 2 years and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do after that type of thing. I really am excited to hear about this. And I think we've even talked in the past about how important I think that early, getting them as early as 9th grade and tracking that, I think is wonderful. Let me see. On the co-teaching, I think I'm done with you, Mrs. Brown. On the co-teaching, do we have any anecdotal information on how that is working as far as helping our disabled students pick up the rigor that they need?
Well, certainly anecdotally, our teachers would say that it was a very necessary step.
But they're seeing the students actually achieving more and so forth?
Yes, the curriculum is much more rigorous. The atmosphere in the classroom is much more focused because the bar is much higher. Our teachers report, and really our families report, that there are positive peer role models. Not that there weren't in the previous classrooms, but there are students who have always planned to go to college. The OGT wasn't, oh my gosh, I might take that, but I might also, take a state exemption because I have a learning disability. Those role models aren't there anymore. Now the role models are the students who are going to take and pass the OGT and do well on the ACT. So anecdotally, we believe that it's been a successful initiative. From a statistical standpoint, we had flat achievement, and so the whole goal is to raise that achievement by which we are judged. However, we also attribute that to the fact that last year we took 10th graders who had no co-teaching opportunities in the 9th grade and put them in the co-teaching classes. So there wasn't that ability to start to bridge that gap. We believe this year, since students were in co-teaching in the 9th and now also the 10th grade, they've had 2 years of that more rigorous curriculum. And so we anticipate that we will see a statistical bump as well.
And I'd just like to just add to members of the board, just to remind the board that for at least 2 years, it was all about compliance. And I just want to remind the board that when you turn it to now achievement, that you have to change then the emphasis, and you have to change the attitude. And our teachers have been very, very open to the change, but it has been a change because we have, when I entered the district, we had to get things turned to compliance. So now what we're looking at is trying to make sure we can get past compliance. And what the co-teaching model is helping us to be able to do is take the emphasis off the disability and put the emphasis on the instructional improvement. Because the disability is no more than us being able to recognize what a student needs, give them what they need, but then still keep the achievement high. Whereas before, the appearance of things is that it has to be separate, and you have to have all of these separate things to be able to get that same achievement. We've said that we know you can do it, and not only have we said it, we're putting you in a situation which then indicates that we are actually supporting that you can do it. You have this disability that we need to address, and we address it, but we know you can still achieve high. And that's really what the co-teaching model is indirectly doing, because we're trying to make sure that all the students understand that. So I think one of the things that I just want to make sure we're clear on is the fact that the model for compliance does not resemble the model for improvement. It's a completely different structure and a completely different way of thinking. And so our emphasis has moved from that. And so as we look at what we're doing, we're going to, we're starting to move that trend toward the instructional piece. And so you're going to start to see, I believe, some significant improvement as we start to embrace that. And we get the professional development for our staff to be able to understand how to work in that environment. So.
I really like your target. In fact, I actually wrote, I made that note here. That one, yeah. I think that really is a great focus. Do you have that placed around the school, perhaps in teacher lounges and things like that?
We haven't placed it around the school. We've continually used it as part of our staff meetings, but we can certainly make a graphic from it.
It just seems like it just kind of refocuses you every time you look at it as to what's important and so forth. I, too, am glad that you had the shadow day. Maybe not as many kids as you wanted to shadow, but on the other hand, those kids go out and then they talk to people. And if nothing else, they're talking to their parents, and maybe they can help dispel some of the rumors about what the high school's like and really give factual information about what it's like, because it's the most frustrating thing as a board member, and even when my kids were here as a parent, to hear people tell stories about the high school that you knew weren't true. And you just, you can't, that's something that we've been living with for 20 years, unfortunately, but it's out there, and so it's great that they then can go out, and when people say something about all the fights and that, and say, but I didn't see that. That isn't what I saw. I noticed with our kids from Willoughby, Eastlake, and Menor, when I've talked to them both at the culinary school and in our law enforcement classes, those are the two that I've been able to talk to at different times, they always say, my parents were a little worried about me coming to Euclid, but it's just like our high school. I mean, it's the same. It's kids are kids. I mean, they recognize that. But it's great because they become ambassadors for us in the community and beyond, and can tell people it's not at all what you think it is. So I'm really glad that you were able to do that. I know it's something that Mrs. Sudar has been asking for a long time. But I think that's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing more data. Yes.
I just wanted to comment about the co-taught classes. My daughter has been attending a student in the co-taught classes last year, and it's the best thing that has ever been implemented in the school system.
I need you to come to the podium so everybody come for them so they can hear you and so they know who you are. Yes, I want you to come to the podium and tell them who you are. I want to make sure they hear
I
that.
have my daughter up here too.
Yeah,
You can bring her too if you want.
Elizabeth, go ahead up there, honey.
Yes, go on. Make it a team.
I didn't plan on doing
That's
this
okay.
because she's here for a government project. So,
Right.
But, no, my daughter Alexandra Seelick has been, she's a junior this year, but she was in co-taught classes last year. And, every year she's been an honor student. I mean, right now, since middle school, she's on an IEP, she's autistic, and Mrs. Hobson knows she's got a 4-point average going. And I'm a big ambassador for the city of Euclid and the school system because she has excelled. The music program, she's secretary of the Key Club. I'm so happy. I mean, her grades, since she's in the co-taught classes, have gone up. She went from a DC up to BA. I mean, it's wonderful. Yeah. And so the teachers, all of them are wonderful. I mean, not one teacher has she had, starting with Mrs. Smilik in kindergarten and preschool. Everyone has been great to all my kids. Now, my daughter Elizabeth goes to Notre Dame Cathedral Latin. She's a senior. And she said if she knew how good Euclid schools were, she would have changed to come here. But now she's a senior, so she wants to finish up at NTCL. But she would like to come here because of the dual class, so she can go to college. That is a huge draw. That is, I mean, you're going to get kids from the private schools, and the parents are going to say, oh my gosh, why, let's send them over to Euclid. That is, whoever came up with that idea is fantastic. I really think it's a great idea.
Mr. Shinnick, I just want you to know that I am, as superintendent, I approve of that message.
And at NDCL, they have Naviance.
Oh.
And she's going to say something. Elizabeth Seelig.
Hello. I wanted to say, like my mom said, dual enrollment is really a big interest to me because I go to a college prep school and we don't offer that. Like, I can't take classes at Lakeland and have it count for my school. And we're starting to have college classes at my school, but I think that's a really big appeal factor. And the Naviance program is a really great online program. Like, I'm pretty much on it every day for my college applications. And what really helps you is there's several tests on there that help you figure out your personality type, like the Myers-Briggs program, which then helps you pick out a career. And you can take like a test that gives you different career clusters, which helps you go on this Super College Match, website, which helps you pick out colleges according to your career interests. And I was introduced to it the end of my sophomore year, and it's been a really big help. Like, I'm applying to University of Toledo, and I can go on and search for it, and I can see how many students from my school have applied and enrolled there and were accepted. And there's a graph function that actually shows like your grade point average versus your ACT or SAT and how you compare to other people who've gotten into that school. And I think it's a really good program for you guys to include. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much.
You just answered so many questions.
Thank you.
Great job.
Charlie, you had that all planned.
Absolutely, sir.
You sat there back there and had that planned. Good job.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Hopkins and also Mrs. Hardaway back there for support for tonight. Very, very thorough presentation, and I think very, very factual. And I think the members of the board, I think what we want to continue to try to do is to make sure we tighten our presentations to be able to give you some information, to really give you the pulse of what's going on in the school. So I really like the fact that how Dr. Smilik and his team have put together really a very, very clear communication model and can give you an accurate indication as to where we need to be. And I think the other thing, just to end it, is that we know we've got work in front of us, but we understand that what we need to do, and we'll continue to be in the trenches every day to make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to your team for the presentation.
Thank you. Dr. Smiley? I was just going to say, it sounds like Euclid High School is an exciting place to be these days.
We love it.
Thank you. Are there any other items to come before the board?
No, ma'am. Not tonight.
Okay. Then I'll take a motion for adjournment. So moved. Moved by Mrs. Sudar, second. Second. By Mrs. DeAngelis. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lysy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith. Yes. Mrs. Sudar.
Yes.
Mrs. Van Hoen.
Yes.
Mrs. DeAngelis.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.